think so.
All right. Thank you, Tiffany. So maybe we can just get started, and then as we move along, some of our missing committee members may show up, so that we, in the effort of being expeditious and with our time. Welcome. Thank you for being here, everybody. Thank you for those from our public. I think you see Mike, Jody, Tracy, and I can't see anybody else on my screen. Very much. Oh, Kelly's here. Hello. Jenna, fabulous. I think it's just about everybody here. Welcome.
Hello.
So, is there protocol to get the meeting started? I forget. Just what is the adjourning step here, Reba? Could use your help.
It's really just member updates where everyone goes around, and that's kind of the roll call version of what Chair Wenner has been doing. So calling the meeting to order and starting the member updates is
perfect.
The way we've done
Fabulous. Okay, well, calling this meeting to order, and then we're just going to start doing our member updates. And just by order of how I see them in my screen. Mark, what's happening on your neck of the woods?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Oh, well, just been taking in the weather, which has kind of been amazing. You know, one day it's 50 and 60 degrees, both here in Portland and in Central Oregon, and then it's rainy, wet, and cold, but that's all been good. Also, I think, as everybody knows, I fill that OCRF slot on the Private Forest Accord Advisory Committee. So we've been going through a similar grant review process. There were 63 grants that we got to divvy up among the 6 of us, I think, and very similar to what we experience at OCRF, except they're very fisheries centric, because that's what the Private Forest Accord is all about. So a lot of amazing projects all around the state, you know, from red band trout to all the coastal salmonids on the coast and everything in between. So that's what I've been up to lately.
Marisa, I believe you're muted. I think you were.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mark. How about you, Jim Hammett? Would you care to tell us what's happening with you?
Well, not a whole lot. It's been a fairly active spring here. We've had a lot of water. I think this is going to be as good a water year as last year. And of course, on this side of the state, that's an important thing. On a personal level, I've been involved with a lot of other National Park Service retirees, kind of dealing with the whole personnel shortage right now in parks, which is pretty serious. And I added a puppy to my string of bird dogs, and that is definitely sort of occupied a lot of time in the last 3 weeks. This pup's about 11 weeks old, and he is a firecracker. I think he's going to be a nice dog, but it's kind of like, I think it's kind of like childbirth. You know, you forget all of the things that are associated with it. I mean, there's a lot of great things, and there's a lot of, but it really sucks up the time. But we're having fun. Anyway, that's pretty much it.
All right, I appreciate it, Jim. Thank you very much. What about you, Moret? What's happening with you?
Well, we've had snow and we've had sun, and it's sort of feeling like spring in Central Oregon, and skiing's still pretty good snowpack. I've been encouraged that the Upper Deschutes Watershed Council has been doing classes on various watersheds in the Deschutes Basin, and they've always have a huge turnout, like 50 or 60 people, and they've been doing them over and over again. So I helped with a class they recently did on the Metolius. So it's and then I got to try to distill a million years into a newspaper article I'm calling Million Years in the Metolius. So I'm just trying to stay in touch a little bit with my natural resource background, and then just trying to stay out of trouble.
Sometimes it's very difficult. I appreciate that, Moret. Thank you very much. Christy, what's our story?
Let's see. Well, I now have a little bit of spring in my backyard too. I think it's fall spring, but I have some hooded mergansers courting around. So that's wonderful to watch. And then 3 weeks ago, 2 beavers moved in. So that's awesome. They look pretty mature. So I don't know if they're looking to den here, set up shop, but it's been wonderful having them in my backyard. Since I advocate so much for beavers on a policy level, it's finally here in my own backyard. I was at the Public Interest Environmental Law Conference last week in Eugene, which was great. Opportunity to connect with partners, but also be on wonderful panels and just hear all the wonderful policy advocacy that people are doing. And just because legislative session is on, it is occupying 99% of my time right now. And so apologies, but I'll also have to hop off early from this meeting to be able to join some legislator meetings I have already scheduled. So my advance apologies for that. But yeah, lots going on the wildlife front, fish and wildlife front at the legislature. And for folks who may not be aware, we are in a long session, so it'll go on until about June.
Thank you, Christy. We're so appreciative of all the work that you do and the time they give us here at OCRF. What about Commissioner Lephart? If you would care to share.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, my background's a little different today. My wife and I are on a halfway through an 18-day road trip. Yesterday, we were in Sonoma, Arizona, got to see some cliff dwellings up close and talk with some folks from the Forest Service about the history of these cliff dwellings, and then went on a train ride in a Verde Canyon, which is an amazing 4-hour train trip down a beautiful canyon into the desert country, and with a couple hundred of my closest friends on the train with us, but it was a lot of fun. I'm actually in Indio right now, California, at my sister's house. So we're going to spend 3 days with her, but I've been as much as I can watching legislative hearings and trying to follow some of the bills that Srishti's following a lot closer than I am. And so we're watching those really close. Got to testify as a non-commissioned member on the Wildlife Response Bill, which is a bill to hopefully provide some funding for some of these wildlife response centers that do really great things in terms of injured wildlife, birds, all kinds of animals. And so we're trying to get some funding to them to help with that effort. And then watching real close some of the wildlife crossing bills that are circulating, and of course the ODF&W budget that's going through the process. So trying to stay engaged in all of that. So, but I was able to get to my sisters in about 15 minutes ago and log on. So, no, I'm here. I made it.
Thank you. And I see how all of us always just manage to find the time and do whatever it takes to just be present. It's very, very much appreciated. Jenna Marmon, if you happen to be available, I know your camera's off. There you go. Is that okay?
Hey,
Is this a good time?
Yeah, no, I was gonna log on my computer, but my computer's dead, and so I'm doing the better thing and sitting outside and sitting on my cell phone. I'm in an all-staff meeting right now for our headquarters here at OPRD up in Kaiser. So just stepping out, and I won't be able to stay for very long, but I did want to share. I shared this with Riva the other day that I'm actually leaving OPRD at the end of this month, at the end of March. We are hoping to do more of what Mark is doing and do some road tripping and do a bit of a sabbatical / early retirement / we'll see and figure it out as we go. So I just wanted to share that, and I shared this with Matt Rippey, that this committee has been one of my favorite bits of being an OPRD planner. And I'm just really honored, and I guess I just feel very privileged to be able to have spent time with all of you. And it's great to be around such a group of folks who are so passionate. And I just very much appreciate all of your skills and brains and passion. And yeah, so all of that being said, I also talked with Matt about who could potentially step in. They have not filled my position yet. So it could be the person who comes after me, but it seems like there might be a little bit of a delay for that. So we're working on that. We just hired a new natural resources program manager, and perhaps she might be able to step in. So more to come. Riva and Matt will talk, or maybe Matt, Riva, and I will talk if it happens in the next month. But yeah, I thank you guys for accepting me and being so great and being such passionate advocates. It's really great. It's really been a great experience. So I'll stay in touch
it's
and I'll
been a
follow you all.
it's been a joy to have you, Jenna. So sorry to see you go. Maybe you don't get to see the chat, but Riva just posted she says, "We will miss you, Jenna. Thank you for all the time and dedication you've given to the committee." And I believe we all echo that sentiment.
Thank
and
you.
I'm sure that we will see you around. This field of caring for the nature in Oregon and the animals that live within them seems to be a pretty group that tends to just cross paths constantly. So I'm sure that we'll see you
100%.
around.
Yeah, and as a private citizen, I'll be able to do some more meeting with key stakeholders, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jenna.
Yeah, thank you all.
Kelly, tell me what's happening in your universe.
Hey, it's sunny here today, so I'm very joyful for that. We have just been living in the roller coaster that is federal stage right now. My husband works for the Forest Service, so I'm kind of married to the Forest Service right now, which has been really stressful, I would say, and new things every week. So he still has a job, and that's great. And I still have a job, and that's great, but probably looking at pay cuts next month. There's definitely a lot of funds that are held up right now, and at least $500,000 that I have of Forest Service grants that aren't not currently being reimbursed. So that's been stressful, but we're enjoying life here. I can relate to Jim because we've been watching a 9-month-old golden retriever, which has brought a lot of fun and silly into our lives, and a ridiculous amount of hair. But it's been a good comic relief in the house, and we've been spending a lot of time at the beach. So still pushing forward on lots of really great projects, and there's a lot of funding that's not held up, and pushing forward, just looking for some mental relief from all this. Yeah. Good to see you guys today.
Good to see you too, Kelly. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate. Yes, this is we're in all this together, and this is exactly where we do it. Jane Hardline, welcome in.
Hi, all. First, I thought I'd give you a frog report since you helped fund the feasibility study on the underpass at Harborton. We've had a really amazing year. We have toted 1,682 frogs downhill and 1,313 uphill. So we think the season's going to be over early this year. Well, they had a lot of good weather to move, and they did it. So there are something like 1,700 egg masses in the wetlands. So yes, it's a good thing we're working on a crossing for them. On another fun thing, our foundation looked at the last set of OCRF funds, and we just had a little thing for the Gopher Project. And so, and Carl really loved that project too, but it just didn't make the cut. So I'm giving them some funds to get them through this next field season. It was like a 3-year project. And so I told them they should come back at this committee and ask for the funds they need for the second 2 field seasons, and they can use the money that we gave them as match. So, and Tim from Oregon Wildlife Foundation is also going to put a little money in. So we've got the Gopher Project going. That's great.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Let's see. On the work front, it's now high season at the nursery. So I love it. I was working on 2 orders this morning. One of them is for the Portland Raceway, where they are putting in stormwater filtration systems, and they need all native plants. And the other one is for a Cambodian temple. Like, how's that for diversity? Anyway, 2 really big orders that we had to get pulled together quickly. So that's it for me.
So appreciated. It's amazing that you can do all of this and just go the extra mile for the OCRF. It's always amazing to hear just how your heart manages to get us even further. So thank you. Extra thank you for all that you do, Jane. All right. Riva, what's happening in your world?
Hi, everybody. So Mauricio knows, but I have just recently returned from India, and I am still dealing with the jet lag. So it's kind of like feeling like the middle of the night for me right now, but we're doing all right. Yeah, I went to visit some family, and it was nice to spend time with family in India, but it was also brutally hot over there. And it was kind of nice to come back to the wonderful weather we're having here. So nice change of pace to be back from the 95+ degree weather in India.
Thank you very much, Riva. I'll just close in sharing my my own. I very much like you, Kelly. I've been affected with what's been happening at a national level. I happen to work with the federal government in the intersection of DEI and climate change, which, as you may imagine, is no longer a thing. So, so I've been in, just as the world would have it, my grandmother passed away last week, and then my uncle a week before that. A tree fell down in the backyard. My backyard, it just knocked out. Things just happen sometimes, one back to back. But then again, I think about all the things that we get to do that just paint life in a different way, and that's something that we can definitely hold on to. Is the people that are trying to do the right thing for the right reasons. So let's think about the frogs that Jane is working with. That's what I want to leave us with. That's far more important. Okay. Now, as Carl would say, let's try to get something done today. And if it's okay with everybody, oh, I'm sorry. Let's of course acknowledge all the wonderful folks that are with us today as well. Of course, Tiffany Caldwell, Tracy Corwin, Jessica Watson, of course, all from the ODFW, the folks from ODFW, and Mike Toti from OHA. And am I missing anyone else? I hope that I'm covering everyone. I think that's about it that I see. Sometimes the way this is here is a little bit unreliable, who is on the list and who isn't. So thank you for being here. Okay. So how about we try to review and approve the meeting minutes from from February 4th, 2025. Is that something that you can pull up? Thank you, Riva. Let's see. There we go. Is someone willing to take this motion?
I can do it because it was my birthday. I move to approve the February 4th, 2025 meeting minutes with the continued authority to correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you, Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. There we go. We got something done. Fabulous. And now I know that because Tristy is being so generous with her time, we can probably move on to a legislative update so that we can give her a little bit of time to prepare for her next meeting. So, Tristy, whenever you're ready.
Thanks so much, Mauricio. And At this point, I will switch out my OCRF committee member hat and put on my WELC hat, which is what I wear when I advocate for stuff. I'll only mention bills that are relevant to the OCRF in some way or another, although just know there's a myriad of bills that can have direct or indirect impacts for OCRF. So the number one bill, of course, is the one that affects the agency itself, which is the agency bill. It's House Bill 5009 is the agency bill. None of the agency budget bills have been heard so far. They're kind of condensed towards the end of March. So for ODF&W, it's supposed to be end of March and then public hearing on ODF&W budget in the first week of April. So that's the timeline for ODF&W's core budget itself. The other bill that has relevance for OCRF is a base bill that is specifically asking for funding for OCRF. This is unrestricted funds, similar to how you have been receiving general funds in the past. So it is House Bill 2984. That bill asks for $1.5 million to allocate to OCRF. This bill is housed within the water package that the Water Caucus has put together. So this bill does come with broad language on being more drought and water-based funding investment, but the language is intentionally broad so that it can cover most of OCRF's mission and not just drought. So that bill had its public hearing at the House Natural Resources Committee, and it passed out of committee on February 12th with unanimous bipartisan support. So that's great. It's supported by both sides of the aisle. And it is now referred to Joint Ways and Means, where all of these bills will wait till the agency budget, various agency budgets are cleared out. Like I said, this is part of the water package. So the discussion and the decisions on this particular allocation will be made within the constraints of the water package. So as the water package moves, this bill will move with it. The water package gets its own allocation. So the leadership of both chambers decide X amount of money, and you can figure out how you want to use it in a water package kind of way. Because of revenue forecast, they were waiting to determine how much goes for the water package. The revenue forecast came out last week. It looks a little bit optimistic than anticipated. There's, I think, $350 million more than anticipated. So that's great. Still not enough to fill all the deficit and holes we'll see. But it's still definitely a good optimistic look. And so now we don't know how much funding Water Caucus will have for the water package. So more like TBD on this one, but it's off to a good start. It's already cleared the committee it was assigned to, and now it's mostly at Ways and Means. And the next bill that has relevance to OCRF is alternate funding sources for ODF&W itself. I mean, we are all kind of familiar with ODF&W's budget, but a quick recap that ODF&W's budget is very limited in its support from general funds. On a very good year, it has been 13%. 13% is the highest they have ever received. And it has been as low as 2%. So they don't get a lot of support from general funds. They depend a lot on federal funds too, through grants, contracts, and PR funds. And we just discussed how that's very uncertain right now. So all of that to say that there is a push to look for alternate funding, dedicated, consistent funding for ODF&W. And that can cover a myriad of things. But there is one bill, which is House Bill 2977. It is also called 1% for Wildlife. That bill is asking for, as it sounds, 1% increase in our state transient lodging tax, bringing it to 2.5%. So currently it's 1.5%. The bill is asking for 1% increase and making it 2.5%. And that increase, the funding will go for implementing the Oregon, our state wildlife action plan, or the Oregon Conservation Strategy, which is our mission. So it doesn't give any more direction to ODF&W other than the fact that the funding is for the state wildlife action plan. So within that broad purview, OCRF can absolutely fit. if this bill were to be successful. And then the other relevant bill that was introduced as late as last week is House Bill 3856. It is also looking at alternate funding source for ODF&W, but it is looking at income tax. So it is proposing a 0.0013% increase in income tax to fund a lot of things. And I will not be able to read through all the things it's going to fund, but think of it like it is going to substitute ODF&W's current dependency on state entirely over to income tax, and then have some more left to play around with for various sources. The bill specifically has language on 5 million per biennium for OCRF. That's clearly spelled out. Along with, like I said, many other allocations, whether it's in terms of dollars or whether it's in terms of percentage. That bill was, like I said, introduced last week. It hasn't had a hearing yet. We're waiting to see what happens to this bill. If it's also assigned to House Natural Resource Committee, if it clears the House, it'll have to go to revenue, similar to the transient lodging tax, which has had its public hearing and is waiting on a work session. So waiting for the committee to vote on it. Once they vote on it, it'll move to revenue. So there is a chance that both income tax and TLT, or the transient lodging tax, will end up at revenue at the same time. And it'll come to revenue to this department, basically committee, House Committee on Revenue, to determine how they want to move forward with that. So more to come on that, but those are some leads that have direct impact on OCRF and its funding from the state. And depending on the pathways, like I said, the water package, alternate funding, all of those are still very much in play. And we are only 2 months into session, so we've got quite a long way to go. So yeah, more to come on that. I don't know if there's any other specific bill or questions you have. I'm happy to answer, of course.
All right. Thank you so much, Christy. That was very thorough. There's quite a few opportunities to be excited about and lots of things on our radar. So definitely plenty of reasons to be optimistic. I love that.
Yeah, the only caveat I will add is absolutely be optimistic, because we have chance, we have good opportunity, but also this is a very tight budget year. So this is what makes it a little bit challenging, not just for OCRF. This is true for every single bill at play right now. So this is an OCRF exclusive, but we're going in with a giant deficit in our transportation budget that needs to be filled. And so the legislature has to make some critical decisions on filling the hole, but also how do we find a consistent stream of funding so that that deficit doesn't keep arising every biennium. So a lot of funding and a lot of negotiations are very focused on the transportation package, which means all other issues are kind of taking a backseat this session. And so there will be a fight for every penny and dollar, basically.
Thank you. Commissioner Laphart, I believe you have a word.
Well, I just want to make sure that everybody knows how much work Christy's putting in.
Yes.
Between herself as personal as it's huge. She deserves a huge amount of credit. And also, for those of you who haven't been following up, Representative Ken Helm has been a huge advocate for ODF&W and all the programs. But it's everything goes right down to the wire at the end. So it's going to be real interesting to see how it all plays out. But can't thank Christy enough for her efforts. And I know she'll say, yeah, it's everybody else, but she's doing a heck of a lot. You just need to know that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. And yeah, thank you for the shout out to Representative Helm, because he's the reason we have our OCRF funding in the water package. He's sponsoring both of the alternate funding sources for ODF&W. So he's definitely a strong advocate for ODF&W and OCRF.
Thank you. So we have a chance. It's because of you folks, and considering all the limitations, cautiously optimistic. I'm gonna stick to that. Thank you, Christy. All right. And we managed to stay somewhat ahead of schedule. Is that right? Fabulous. All right. Let's move on to our next item in the docket. That would be Riva with OCRF program updates.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, was muted. That's correct, Mauricio. So I just have some quick program updates for you all, and I thought we'd start with wrapping up where we are at for your fall 2024 RFP. As you probably remember, last month you all approved your project recommendations, and those are going to be taken to the commission by myself on March 14th. And the commission will be voting on those committee recommendations. So that's where we are in the process, really close to finishing up the fall RFP, and then we'll move into contracting, which can be a process, and we'll probably complete that by May, get all projects contracted in May of 2025. So that's where we're at with the fall RFP. Any questions on that before I move on? I'm not seeing any in my limited screen that I can see here. Okay. And then the next thing that I wanted to get into with the committee is just a quick budget update. And I think this is going to be pretty important for today's discussion on our spring RFP planning. So I'm assuming we will be coming back to this budget shortly, but so here's the donations information for you all to see again. Since the beginning of OCRF, you've received $581,000 from electronic licensing system and point of sale. So that's anglers and hunters that have been donating to the OCRF. And then from corporate and private donations, you've received $1.3 million. So pretty incredible. And here is your most recent budget update for the OCRF. And the base program, after removing the fall 2024 recent project allocations that were recommended last month, that leaves $689,000 for the base program funds that you can think about strategically for your next RFP. And in the drought package, you have $776,000 remaining. And that's for the last RFP of the biennium. So really encourage the committee to think strategically about how you're going to be allocating these funds in your last RFP of the biennium. ARPA funds have all been committed to projects, and wildlife crossing funds are scheduled to be, the lottery bond sale is scheduled for next month, $5 million. Any questions on the budget numbers we have here from the group? I think I see a hand. Mark, start.
Yeah.
Yeah, Riva, can you just clarify, do we have to spend these dollars by the end of the biennium, or do any unspent dollars carry over?
You do not have to spend these by the end of the biennium. And that's something to think strategically about, is what you're going to be bringing into the next biennium, because this is what you have left for drought and base program. And there is no, with ARPA funds, there was some more time restrictions for the drought package and base program. They're unrestricted funds in the sense that there's no timelines on expenditure for them and obligating them. So they are more general, and they don't have those restrictions tied to them.
What's the timeline for deciding when do you post the announcements?
So actually, today is for today's meeting, I have a agenda item to discuss the funding maximums for the RFP, for the spring RFP. And the committee will be voting on what those funding maximums are going to be, if you're going to be carrying forward the same that you have done in the past, or how you'd like to allocate those funding maximums for this RFP. And then I'll go over the upcoming RFP timeline that I have proposed in just a little bit as well.
Great, thanks.
So
And what's the balance on the electronic licensing funds that we have on hand, if any? Or is that?
That's included in your base program.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but that is to say that folks could be donating, to the base program today, tomorrow. So this value could change. For the rest of the biennium, there will still be some expected donations coming in through ELS. Commissioner Labhart.
Yeah, just to add to that, Mark. So between now and I forget what the closing date is, but it's like the end of May is when most hunters apply for their tags. And so there's a huge amount of revenue that will come in to the department from that purchase. And I just did it for myself, and I noticed that there was a real nice little OCRF logo on there that said, "Would you like to donate?" And it actually hit me up twice. So once when you come up, it shows it, and then it comes up again. So I think there will be some more ELS funds that will be coming in for. That's just revenue to date, I think, if I'm correct, Reba. So there will be hopefully some more donations from those folks that apply for their tags for hunting for this coming year. So that'll help a little bit.
Yeah, that's correct, Mark. Thank you. It is revenue to date. So this could change by the end of the biennium. Any other questions on budget or? Not seeing any. All right. Well, I'm assuming we're going to be probably shifting back to this slide because it's something important to consider for as you're going to be thinking about your upcoming RFP that you'll be offering for the spring. So that's the next agenda item I wanted to move into, Mauricio, if that's all right with you.
Of course, of course.
Okay. So now we're going to move into the proposed spring RFP timeline. So just as you're closing up your fall RFP and going to the commission in March, I have here a proposed timeline for the spring RFP, which would be opening on March 20th. So that's in 2 weeks from now. I have here laid out that it would be open for 50 days. This is 10 days shorter than we have done in the last one. It was open for 60 days. So I'm trying to crunch it a little bit, but let me know if there's any feedback from the group about that, and I can rework it if we want to keep that 60-day open that we've done in the past. And I have here technical review period would be mid-May through mid-June. The advisory committee review period would be June 17th through mid-July. And then with the potential for me I would try to release those a little bit earlier to the committee so they could get a head start on those project reviews. Give you guys a little bit more time for that review period. And then another thing that I'm going to try to work into this timeline was some feedback from a few committee members, Liza Jane, I believe, on doing some follow-ups with the technical reviewers. So I have here July 9th through 11th, where I would set aside time on the technical reviewers' schedules to be open, to have the opportunity to connect with committee members. If you have questions as you're going through those reviews, and something pops up and you'd like to chat with a technical reviewer as you're reading through those technical reviews. And so, and I figure this would be kind of good timing because it's right before the reviews are due, and that's probably likely when the questions are going to be burning in your minds, most likely. But open to feedback on when you think that would be a good time to connect with technical reviewers. And then, so I have here scheduled the advisory committee recommendations meeting would be July 29th. So I'd be rescheduling our August meeting just back a few days to July 29th. And I will send out a meeting invite to hold that on your calendars. And then going to commission September 12th. All right, any feedback on timeline from the committee?
I think this looks great. I appreciate the opportunity to have, one-on-one or follow-ups with the technical review team at ODFW. And I just appreciate how clearly this is laid out. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly.
I was wondering, there's quite a lot of time. Well, I guess it's not that much between when we make our recommendations and when the commission votes on them. So I was wondering if we.
Yeah, good point.
If there was a way, what's the meeting before that one for the commission?
So the reason for that gap is, unfortunately, I tried to get us into the August commission meeting.
Oh, okay.
But the problem is that the commission deadlines for materials are about a month beforehand, and or sorry, more than a month beforehand. They wouldn't allow us to make that August commission meeting in time. So in the past, we've tried to squeeze them in, and they're not. We've sent them kind of to TBD packet materials, and they're no longer allowing us to do that. So we're gonna have to unfortunately wait till the September commission meeting for that.
Yeah, because I was looking at if we all know they're coming, do we really need almost a whole month for us to review the grants? I mean, I know that when I have a whole month, other things, more urgent things get done first, and they all get done in the last week anyway. So I don't know how other committee members feel about that. If there was a way to tighten up the schedule a little bit, it might be with us having like 3 weeks to do that instead of 4. But maybe it doesn't make any difference. Maybe it's a moot point.
Yeah, what does the committee think about a 3-week review period instead of 4? I'm a little hesitant because I know everyone's schedules is different, and you never know where that's going to fall in your plans for that month. So I'd like to give 4 weeks at least. Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, I was just gonna argue on the behalf of grantees too, at least on the restoration side of things. You would be hard pressed to get any in-water work stuff done at that point, even if it came through in August. So it feels to me like timing wise for projects, September is not a big difference than August. And I would prefer, I guess, to have more time on our end, just because, like you said, Jane, I mean, we're all procrastinators, but certainly having a little extra squish. I'm just thinking it from the grantee side of things, that it wouldn't break it to me if it's 1 month later, I guess.
Got it.
Most
That's a
people
good
have their project
perspective.
this summer already. Yeah.
Thanks, Kelly. Good perspective to think of it from the grantee side. All right. Well, I will keep it as is for now, but let me know if you have feedback later on. Feel free to email me about the timeline. Okay, so now we can move into a little bit of a discussion. This is something the committee had discussed at the last meeting in February, and you guys had talked about what's going to be the most impactful award amount, maximum funding amount. But we didn't really come to a conclusion at the last meeting. So just kind of open the discussion. But for today, I'm hoping to get from the committee what your final thoughts are, and then actually vote on the funding maximum for this upcoming RFP, so you can think strategically about it, and I can get it into the grant announcement for grantees to have an understanding of what to expect. So for your last, sorry, I'm just getting some feedback, trying to figure out. Everyone could probably mute, that might help. Okay, great. So for your last RFP, you had a 800,000 roughly for drought. As you saw in the budget, we have a little bit less than that in drought package funds left, just like 770,000, and then 200,000 from base program. Looking to hear if that's the baseline of where you want to, what you'd like to include in the grant announcement for this upcoming RFP, and then for the maximum funding amounts for each bucket of funding, if you'd like to keep it at the 100,000 for drought projects and 50,000 for non-drought projects, or if you'd like to make some tweaks and adjustments on that. And again, just thinking what's going to be the most strategic and best amount to offer for these grantees.
Rila, off of the top of your head, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll let Maria go first. I did not raise my hand.
I'm sorry, I just had a question. So I just wrote down that we had 776, 237 for drought, so not 800. But this proposal would spend the rest of our drought money and just zero it out. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
And obviously we wouldn't be able to go to 800,000, but we'd be able to go to 776.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mauricio.
Off the top of your head, I'm curious to know if you happen to have a notion of, in regards to drought and non-drought projects, in terms of the top difference of scoring, what was the cutoff of the projects that were really, really close to being at the top on each of those that maybe didn't quite make. Here's what I mean by it. For me, a way to determine whether we should expand or keep it at the same level, a decent rubric for me would be, let's say we had 4 projects that were just a few points away from making the cuts on either side. If that was the case, then maybe having an extra a few more funds would make sense. But if the difference between those that were at the very top and the next layer of folks was a significant amount, then maybe the base program was accurate. That's the way I'm looking at it. Do you happen to know if there was a significant distance between those that almost made it and those that didn't?
And Mauricio, when you say significant difference, do you mean in their score and rank?
In the scoring, correct. In the scoring.
Or their funding amount request? Oh, okay. I can actually look that up, but off the top of my head, it's there's not a huge difference where those above the funding line and below. And there's many that, as if with every round, there's many amazing projects that have scored really well that we just can't fund. And they have a very similar, not a significantly lower rank or score below the ones that get funded. Go ahead, Mark Stern.
Yeah, I think my initial thought is we should spend out all the drought money and maybe even throw in another 24,000 and make it 800,000. And I guess I say that I think for our our applicants and people looking at the grants, I think it's nice just to have a consistent number going across, and they'll go, okay, 800,000 again for droughts, and it will look familiar and the same. And then for non-drought stuff, I know we've done 200,000. Obviously, we don't know what we're going to get in for the next biennium, but there's a part of me, rather than trying to bank for the future, think, well, 200,000, we could spend 250,000, because it's really not a lot of money for our base program grantees. If the grants don't tend to all be $50,000, but we can all do the math. At 200,000, that's maybe only 4 projects. So I'm thinking out loud, but I would round the drought stuff up to 800,000 and push all that out and think about if we want to offer a little bit, at least 200,000, maybe a little bit more in the base program. I also think from the legislative standpoint, I think we want to be demonstrating that we have a need for the money and that we're spending the money and it's going out the door, rather than if they look back and say, well, your base program, you still have $680,000. You don't really need more base funding money. So that's the other part of me that would sort of incentivize me to spend our base money and keep demonstrating that we have good projects, and that's why we need more.
And that's a really good point. Yeah, to show that how quickly and effectively we have spent the money that was allocated from the legislature and how we've got it on the ground. That's something that OCRF is known for, is there's a pretty effective grant program that's getting the money out to these organizations for the projects. Go ahead, Jane Hartline.
Well, I just want to agree with both of you on that. I think strategically it makes sense to, it's a way to remind the legislature that they formed our committee and wanted us to give money away, and then they have been not giving us much money to give away, and that we've used it all. And if they want us to continue, we're going to need to be funded. So I think that kind of argues to, let's go ahead and spend that money.
All right, go ahead, Maurette.
I agree as well. I think our money is going to be even more important in the upcoming year with uncertainties with other funds. So I think we should get it out there. And we have been penalized in the past for not spending the money that we had. So it's not an unreasonable thought that we should spend it.
All right, so sounds like spend the drought and, oh, go ahead, Mauricio.
No. I was just curious because I'm not familiar enough how if something like, when you say, Maurette, that we were penalized for not using all the money, is the way that this works, because like I said, I'm not familiar with this, that you using all the money, like getting it out the door, really creates leverage for the legislation to bring more, or it is also a potential outcome that we spend it all and we just wouldn't have enough for a next round. I guess that is a legitimate curiosity of mine. How does that work?
Well, that's a risk, Mauricio, because as Tristy brought up, there's all these bills in the legislature for the OCRF. There's 1.5 million of unrestricted funds for OCRF from water package, but we don't know for sure if that's coming. So it's a risk. I think if you spend your base program, that's risky, all of it. You should probably, keep a little bit in the bank just in case. And you could decide if you want to do that from drought or base program. But since drought has that drought allocation, it makes a little bit more sense to spend it and keep some base program as your as it can be used for any expense for the program.
Thank you. Okay, makes sense.
I guess the last thing I'd argue for is I understand and agree with to a point two to spend the money because we have it and to use it and to show that it is needed and we're using it. But I would just say to keep a little bit more in the base program versus drought, just because that feels like our juicier money if push came to shove in the end.
Good point, Kelly. So are you comfortable with the 250,000 proposal from Mark, or that still
because we
feels
have
comfortable?
there was like 387,000 or something that was in there. Is that right? Total
682, right?
680.
600. Okay, yeah. No, I'm fine with the 250. That's fine.
Okay, so if everyone's all right with it, I think I'll put in the grant announcement for 250,000 of base program funds in this spring RFP and 800,000 for drought. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Commissioner Labhart, you have a worldview of all this too, how all this seems or sounds to you.
Yeah, it can go either way. We want to show that when they give us the money that we spend it. But on the other hand, if you spend it all and for some reason the legislature doesn't give us the money, then we're stuck. So we do a little bit of carryover. So I'm going to punt. I think it's just up to you guys what you want to do. I personally like to show the legislature that, you give us the money, we've spent it, and we need more. But that's a pretty slippery slope sometimes, because if we do spend it all and they somehow, for some reason, say, well, thank you for that, we really appreciate it, and we're done then. So it's a slippery slope both ways. So I didn't help you at all.
Well, it's a good, we do, and correct me, Reva or Commissioner Labhart, if I'm wrong, but I think we do have the Fishhawk Lake money sort of in another account that if we didn't get any additional appropriation for the next biennium, we could always look at that, whatever that is, $700,000 or $800,000 plus to keep us going for another biennium.
Yeah, but I think historically, Reva, we used that for, and I don't know if, no, he's not on. I think historically we've used that for your salary. Is that correct? Administrative cost?
I believe that is a emergency fund to fund the coordinator for my salary if we ran out of money. So that they're kind of holding that as a emergency and trying to not spend it.
And do you know how much is in
possible.
there? What's left right now?
I think it's Mark. I think Mark Stern had it. It's probably about 700,000 or 800,000, maybe 770,000.
Okay.
It's probably a value I have in my mind.
Yeah, but Mark Stern's correct. That money is there. So, and it has kind of been held in abeyance for OCR, quote, OCRF. So.
Right. It's held by Oregon Wildlife Foundation.
Yes.
They have.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jane has been there.
Well, maybe Barrett should go first, because I was just going to say, I would just like to ask the two Marks, if you were going to up that from 250,000 to a bit more that you would feel comfortable with, would it be like 300,000, 400,000 for the base program, and still leave some money in there to carry over, but still be pretty convincing that if they want us to keep doing this, they need to be serious about giving us more money? I kind of hate to say, oh, well, they didn't give us any money, so we're really only going to spend like 1/4 of what we have available to spend in the base program. That seems kind of risky.
Yeah, we have, as I recall, when I was looking at the budget, we have 1.5 is what's in there, right? We're asking for the legislature for 1.5 million.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, if we, I don't know, gang, it's a slippery slope both ways. But if you're asking for my opinion, I would try to spend it down, but leave a little bit in there to carry over, just to show them that, you know, you gave us the money, we spend it, we have way more people that are asking for funding than we can fund. And so that's why we need the money. And so I want to continue the program to try to fill these gaps that of projects that are out there that, you know, go below the funding line. We're there to help.
So if you were gonna pick a number out of the sky, to spend out of the base, program based on what you just said, what number would you pick? 250,000 is on the table. I'm saying maybe it should be higher. But yeah, I agree with you. It is a slippery slope, but, based on what you said, what would you pick?
I don't know. I think that's up to you guys. I don't, you know, you're the advisory committee. You advise the department, and I'm more policy guy. I'm punting, Jane. So yeah, I'm punting. I don't know what the figure should be. So.
Well, Jane, part of my thought process was actually you could do 300,000, and that would leave not quite 400,000 in the base program. Plus, with the money from the electronic licensing stuff, that would, by the time we came around to looking at it again, it would be over 400,000. So we could spend 300 this time, and then anticipate having 2 grant cycles of 200,000 each in the next biennium if we didn't get any more money.
And I guess my question is, what about the 5 million that's coming for the wildlife crossings? When does that show up? And you know, I think we need to believe in OCRF that it's a viable thing and not be afraid to spend money. If we're too timid here, I think we'll just be sort of accepting defeat.
Well, I would just add that 5 million's got a lot of strings tied to it. And I think Reba will tell you that. It's specifically for wildlife crossings. And then there's a bunch of strings that talk about shovel-ready projects and those kind of things. And it's got some pretty tight sideboards on how we can spend that money for, quote, wildlife crossings. So.
Yep, exactly. Thanks, Commissioner Lampart. It's very restrictive. We have not a lot of ability to use it besides for projects that are ready to go right away. And we had only a few that were submitted through our wildlife crossing request for letters of intent. And so that is, some of it is a little up in the air with the federal grant freeze. So some of that was tied to a funding swap with ODOT for funds for their wildlife crossing project, but they were getting the funds that we were going to swap with for it was from a federal grant. So we're still kind of waiting to hear on that.
So I have maybe a potential compromise. So I think based on what I'm hearing, anything that is restricted seems like these are the ones that we really want to get out the door as quickly as we can to show that we are being responsible with those funds that have a particular purpose. And those that are unrestricted, those are the ones that we want to be maybe a little bit more cautious. 250,000 seems like a reasonable amount just because we're expanding it from what it was the last RFP. And then what I'm thinking is, just like we've done in the past, maybe we can also see if by the at the cutting line, when we see that there's just maybe by the time we get to that set of 2 or 3 projects that just didn't quite make the cuts, see if there's an opportunity to get those through the finish line with just an extension like we've done in the past. And then maybe that is that sort of like extra $50,000 of flexibility that we could have from this. And if the ELS funding is accumulating at a reasonable rates, then that gives us the exact same amount of funding or the next RFP of unrestricted funds. So maybe that might be a way in which we are being as responsible as we can with unrestricted, but at the same time getting all those that are have a particular purpose out the door as quickly as possible.
Mark Stern.
Yeah, Mauricio, I like that idea. If we, I think what I heard you saying is we offer 250 and then we have some latitude after that. Also realizing that when we come to those decision points, the end of July, at that point, we will know what the legislature has done for the next biennium. So then I think we'll all feel a little more informed and comfortable on knowing what our future looks like.
Great. And as far as the funding maximum goes per project, what does the committee feel for the drought versus non-drought bucket, keeping it at 100,000 and 50,000, or adjusting that in any way? I see a from Kelly.
It seems like is this keeping it
Keep
as
it as
is? Is that
is.
correct? Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
I think that would be consistent for our applicants who have seen that in the past rounds. And is that approved by the whole committee? Well, actually, we can make this official and go through a vote for the funding maximum. Just give me a second.
Jim has his hand up, and I'm not sure if this is a legacy hand, Mark, or you meant to have your hand up still.
I've still got it up. I guess, looking at those past projects that were related to drought, there was in some of them what I would consider to be a fairly loose connection with drought. And I wonder why we distinguish between these two to basically double the amount. I guess I would tend to want to just keep it the same for drought and non-drought, recognizing that we've got a lot of money. Because I don't know. I guess that was one of the concerns that I had, is that many of the projects that were submitted and that we approved for drought, the connection with drought was not strong in my mind. And so the difference here is not strong either between the two pots of money and the two objectives we're trying to put forward. And I would wonder about just putting the same cap on both of those projects, regardless of which pot of money they're coming out of. That's just I'm not even sure it's a suggestion. It's just an observation.
Thanks, Jim. Go ahead, Mauricio.
That is a very, very good point, Jim. And this is something that has come from some applicants that say that they feel that in order for them not to lose an opportunity, that they would have to somehow create a connection to droughts, whether or not they felt that they had to. And so I think within our own criteria, we should have a way to really add legitimacy to the connection to drought. I would not have a problem maintaining the maximum as they are, but we should have a way to know, maybe through the technical reviews, to say like, okay, this is definitely a drought versus like, no, they're just trying to put drought here just so that they can get the money, but this is not really where it should have been. That's just my 2 cents on that matter.
Yeah, I think as it is now, they have to, in the application, show that they have the project is going to address an aspect of drought or climate change or aquatic habitat resiliency. So it's a little bit broader than just drought, but it's really in the long term, it's to figure out if they're going to qualify for this funding bucket of drought package funds or from our base program. So it's it's something to think about in how we review and evaluate those drought projects and their impact. So for funding maximum, I'm hearing keep it the same from most of the committee. Does that sound about right? Okay. And so I have, Mauricio, if you're okay with it, making it official for our funding announcement coming up.
That sounds right. I just wanted to check with you, Jim. Does that feel reasonable to you?
I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. I just, and it's certainly fine. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, let's move ahead.
All right. So I think I have separated them. So one
We
for
have one
the,
more word, I think, from our Commissioner Labhart.
Well, it's a little bit different. And I apologize for talking so much today, but since we're on the subject of RFP future planning for spring of 2025, the bonds for crossings will be sold next month. And so how are we tying in the advisory committee in that process? I probably should know this, but I don't. How are we with the requests and advisory committee weighing in on those? Selecting projects, those kind of things. Help me understand.
yeah, great question. Thanks, Commissioner Lampart. So we released a request for letters of intent for them to apply for those wildlife crossing funds. And that was in order to receive projects that are going to fit all of those sideboards and restrictions that go along with that funding. And so the next step would be for them to be invited to apply, and then the advisory committee would review those projects that get submitted. So that's what's coming next for it.
Timing, Reva?
Timing, within the next month. It's going to coincide a bit with our spring RFP, but I'm anticipating only a few of those letters of intent will go towards application. And so just a few applications for the committee to review for wildlife crossing funds. So
Okay.
it's going to add a little bit to your workloads, but shouldn't be too bad.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Do we have any idea how quickly the bonds will sell? I mean, is that like a thing where they all go out the door May 15th, or do they trickle out over 12 months?
You know, I'm not clear on that. And there's a really large 100-page document about the lottery revenue bond sale, and it's quite complicated. And when I know the exact date, I will let you know. But as of now, I'm not sure the exact date that how those get sold. Sorry about that.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on. Rita.
Okay. So this is the drought project funding maximum for the committee to vote on. Go ahead, Mauricio.
So I believe this is the one that we agreed on 800,000. Is that correct? Or that's the proposed number? Is that right?
I believe so, yes. Mhm.
Okay. I'm happy to make the motion. Am I allowed to make the motion?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hereby move to approve a funding maximum of $800,000 for drought projects from Round 9 Spring 2025 RFP of the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor? Fabulous. I believe that was unanimous.
All right, and the next one for non-drought projects. Oh,
Jane?
first we have a,
Well, I just have a question. If we say it's a maximum of, does that still give us the flexibility to put a little more in there when we get to the finish line?
Ooh, very good point, Jane.
Well, we don't have any more drought dollars though that are going to be coming, right?
Not on the drought, on this one, on this next
Oh,
category. So
right.
we
On
said
non-drought. Good point. Sorry. Good catch. Yeah.
the thing that we said that we may have a little bit of flexibility on that extra between 250 and 300. Well, can we say a maximum of 300 here, but the RFP is just says 250? Would that be, is that something that we can do?
To give yourself some wiggle room, you mean, for the,
Exactly. So we're establishing only the maximum, but what we advertise is only 250. Is that something we can do?
I believe so. So yeah, in the announcement, I would just put 250, but today you say 300,000. Yeah, I think that gives you some wiggle room
Exactly.
if you want it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, fabulous. I can take this one or somebody else if somebody wants.
I'll be
I'll
happy to
hereby
do
move.
it. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. I hereby move to approve a funding maximum of 300,000 for non-drought projects from the Round 9 Spring 2025 RFP of the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund.
And I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Fabulous. Another unanimous vote. Thank you for that, Jane. That would have put us a bit of a bind.
All right. I think that was the end of my agenda item. And next up, we have public comment.
Excellent. And we're relatively still on time as per our agenda. Fabulous. Do we have any public comment for those folks that are here in our meeting today? Yeah, Mike Toady, I see you there. I'm not sure if you have a word that you'd like to share. And no, Tracy.
I just want to share how interesting I find all this, and conservation is very near and dear to my heart. So that's why I've kind of joined these, just kind of learning what all is involved in it. And I'm just learning a lot. So I really appreciate all of you.
And we appreciate having you here, Tracy. Thank you for accompanying us and for how much you care. All right, so we're gonna assume that that is all the public comment. And so maybe we'll take a break as per our agenda. So let's see, it's 2:19, let's call it 2:20. How about we meet back at 2:30? All right, see you back then. Thank you so much. Glad to see you're back, Jessica. Much appreciated. All right, welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. And Jim gets a trophy for most timely return. Congratulations. Who we're missing? I think Jane. Let's give Jane a moment. And Commissioner Laphart. All right, I think we can probably get started. Maybe they can catch up a tiny bit. Next item in our agenda, it's a strategic communications planning update. Originally, I was terrified that I was going to have to do this on my own, and then we have the fortune of having Jessica Watson here from ODFW that can help us get a little bit of an update on what's happening, and I believe maybe Riva can also second. So whenever you're ready, Jessica, thank you for being here.
Yeah, Riva, did you want to start off with a little intro and then I can get into the details, or how do you want to do this?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to provide a really quick update from the email that Haley sent out, but I'm sure you have more detail to provide. So I was just going to let the committee know that the Quinn Thomas team is now focusing on messaging development, and so they're going to be moving into focusing on a fact sheet development, which is something that I know Mark Stern was asking about, kind of like the leave behind for legislative session, and a social toolkit. So that's kind of first on their messaging development, and then they plan to develop different posts and things to use for the next grant funding cycle announcement. So they're focusing on messaging is the key takeaway here for their next steps. That's all I had. So go ahead, Jessica, on any further details you wanted to provide.
Yeah, and thanks so much, Riva, and thanks everyone for letting me jump in here and provide an update. So when talking with Quinn Thomas, there was a lot of focus in the beginning stages around brand identity and really getting kind of hung up around a logo. And really, we kind of had a discussion. We're like, you know what we really need are some of these key messages. And the key messages really for several of the targeted audiences identified by OCRF. So that includes donors and donors kind of being broken up into those with certain interests in conservation and recreation versus other donors, legislators in general. Just because we're in a legislative session, it's really important to get that messaging clear and out there as soon as possible so we can start using that right now, knowing that as we heard earlier, that there's some legislative bills that have OCRF connections. So we want to make sure that that messaging is there and we have what we need to use. And then also for applicants as well. So really having that messaging for applicants, and knowing that none of these target audiences are more important than the other. It's really just how do we take our overarching messages and tailor them so that when we are, you know, trying to reach out to these different groups, we're using the right kind of messaging that actually speaks to their interests and their beliefs and kind of what drives them. So that's kind of where we've kind of come together with Quinn Thomas to focus on that messaging. Like Riva mentioned, then that would also be the development of some of those kind of like one-pagers that we can leave behind for each one of those target audiences, knowing that we will have a OCRF solicitation coming up in the future, that we want to make sure that we have that as well prepared for what that looks like. And then just some of kind of like the assets and templates. So how we can, you know, start using some of these products and posts and be able to change things around so we can be moving those types of messages out through all of our different networks. So I think that's kind of the focus that we're going to try and do in the next couple of weeks. And the other thing I talked with Quinn Thomas about is a good time to try and start coordinating when to bring all of this back to you all. So have Quinn Thomas actually here showing you, these are the messages, these are what we're working on, here are the one-pagers, and here's what we've developed. So still working on that coordination, but happy to take any questions you all might have on that. But that's my update.
Very much appreciated, Jessica.
Mhm.
Questions, thoughts? Mark, please come in.
Yeah, Jessica, that sounds good. I'm just curious if there's any conversation of things like reaching out to Oregon Field Guide, because it seems like the OCRF projects would just be lots of possibilities of interesting stories that they could pick and choose from. And it could even be one just about OCRF as well as multiple ones about any one of the projects.
Thanks, Mark. That's a really great point. And I think that's part of like after this messaging, another product was for Quinn Thomas to develop a couple of like highlight stories that then could be used to try and reach out to like other groups and to promote that. But just an OCRF story in general, haven't had that discussion. We've mostly been talking about like, instead of doing just 2 larger, more in-depth stories, to do more smaller stories that kind of highlight the different components of what OCRF funds, you know, conservation, recreation, and then, you know, all these, you know, bringing, you know, underserved communities into nature. And so kind of doing a little bit more smaller stories to promote that messaging. But that's a good point. I'll put that in my notes and see what that possibility could be of where we could be pushing these types of stories out to.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for all the work that you do and keeping us up to date with all this and all the you know, little bits and pieces that allows OCRF story to get to the ears and hearts of the people that need to hear it. It's very important work. All the things that we do here, we need to find all those folks that haven't found our table. I appreciate
Exactly.
you.
Thanks.
Fabulous. Next on the docket, I believe Mark Stern and I would be talking about the ODFW Commission workshop on OCRF and community engagement that took place just a couple of weeks ago, right? Was it a couple of weeks ago? It's time warp. It's
February 13th.
oh Jesus. Oh Jesus. So you want to start, Mark?
Sure. Well, just as a little background, maybe as was mentioned before, but the ODF&W Commission had their regular meeting on Friday, February 14th, and the day before they had various meetings and conversations. And one agenda item was to talk about OCRF in particular. I think it was called out our urban partners. And it was to be an in-person meeting here in Portland, but unfortunately we had snow and weather that day. So the in-person part of it was transferred to a Teams meeting, but it was sort of managed by ODF&W, and Sarah was there kind of running the show. And we had 4 partners from Portland. One of them was People of Color Outdoors with Pamela Slaughter, who we funded her several times. Apano was another group, which is sort of the Pacific Ocean community, although I don't think they'd refer to them that way. They like the term Apano. Another one was called Outgrown, which previously I think it was called Hike It Baby. And the fourth one was Soul River, which is run by Chad Brown, who's an African-American veteran who takes young youth, other veterans take youth out to go fishing. So it was kind of a round robin table discussion. Mauricio and I each got to say a few words at the beginning, kind of welcoming them and talking about OCRF a little bit in front of the commission. And then each of those 4 people gave kind of a presentation on the work they were doing and how it connected with OCRF. And I thought it was a great opportunity. The commission was very attentive. They had several questions. Commissioner Labhart chimed in, as well as Commissioner Hyde and Commissioner King. So it was a good interactive discussion. I would say one take-home message we got from all of them unanimously was somewhat of, they felt like the application was a little too long, and they sort of made the point that when you're a small nonprofit organization applying for funding and you have one part-time or maybe full-time staff person, there's just a lot of effort for that one person to sort of weigh the pros and cons of what are the odds of getting that grant and versus sort of the time and effort that it took to write it. And even I think Chad Brown shared that in some of the other funding venues he'd been a part of, sometimes it was a conversation rather than an application, just talking with whoever was reviewing the grant. I think one suggested there was even a phone app that would allow you to populate your grant application. So it was interesting ideas, but I think the point sort of registered that it's especially hard for small NGOs to necessarily kind of evaluate the pros and the cons of going through the application process. But overall, I'd say it was really positive, and I felt like the commissioners were really engaged, and Debbie, the director, was there. She also spoke favorably about it. Mauricio, what was your worldview on all this?
And we also missed one more participant there, which was the Green Lens Initiative that was also there. And yes, I think you covered a lot of it. I think one thing that I think is super valuable is that we get to see a little bit more of the human dimensions of the folks that are working behind these organizations. You know, where we sit, oftentimes we see the narratives that are written in their proposals, what they look on paper, and maybe when we have the opportunity for them to come and present here. But I think it was really valuable for the commission and for us to see sort of like the people behind them and how proud they are of the work they do. And, you know, so their own stories and what brought them to do the work they do. And sometimes, you know, what it looks like to try to go through the OCRF grant application process. I think we often forget that we get caught in processes and logistics, and we don't get to see a little bit of the impact that we're having in communities and people. And I think that is an important touch point as we move through approving proposals and just getting a glance of what is it that we're doing in the real world and how we are impacting communities, habitats, and nature, wherever they are. And this one was in particular in urban areas, audiences that just simply are a little bit too separated from the world of conservation by a few layers, and how they're making it relevant for people that may not have it as conversation at the dinner table. So I thought that was super valuable, and I was very pleased that we got a chance to have that conversation and have the commission listen to it. So all in all, very, very pleased that we had an opportunity to have that happen. All right. Any questions or thoughts about that particular experience? Commissioner Labhart, please come in.
I'll just weigh in. I've been pushing for this for a long time to get OCRF in front of the commission. And I don't know if you all realize it, but it takes, our agendas are just horrendous. I mean, I'm trying to get one other agenda item on the commission, and they said, yeah, we might be able to get you in December. So, that's how tough it is to get on the commission agenda. So I think it's really great that we got OCRF in front of the commission, and it couldn't have two better people to kick it off than Mauricio and Mark. It shows that, I think it showed the commission that the niche that OCRF fits is very valuable, because there's a lot of other big grants that go out, either from ODF&W or OWEB or those kind of things. And you got the big granters, and the niche that OCRF fills is really powerful when we listen to some of those folks that talk and how valuable that small little grant that they got from OCRF, what that meant to them and how they used that grant and the benefits that they got from it. So there's a huge niche that you have filled with those communities and with those grants. And I think the other point is that was made that, we don't fund everybody. And so there's a huge need that if we had more money and more dollars out there, we could maybe make some bigger grants or fill some greater other opportunities to do good things out there. So I think it did strike a real chord with the commission, and I'm sure glad we got in front of them so they can see that, because they've got a lot of things going on, and I think it was really powerful to have OCRF there. So it was well received.
Thank you, Commissioner Lebhart. It was also noted your participation there and your words of support, and how you've always been there for us and part of the conversation. So nothing but appreciation and gratitude for you and your presence in the spirits of the OCRF. So all right, well, I think let's see, do we have any next steps to discuss, Riva?
Yeah, I just have some quick meeting updates for our next meeting and for our in-person meeting over the summer to wrap us up today. So our next meeting is April 1st, and I actually just wanted to hear from the group if there's anything of interest we're going to be having Leif Rasmussen from the Ocean Acidification Hypoxia Council, OAH Council, coming to speak with us. You might remember he came last year to the committee to present on ocean acidification, and I just wanted to know, well, he wanted to know if there was anything in particular that you were interested in hearing about, any fisheries that are of particular interest to the committee, because he has a wealth of knowledge to share with you. So if you think of anything, feel free to reach out or email me. But he'll be presenting at our next meeting. And then the next final update is our in-person meeting, which I had mentioned for June, is actually going to be moved to July 29th. So please hold that on your calendars, and we are looking at holding it in a central location that would be easier for some folks, the committee, to get to, which is Central Oregon. So Bend area is some venues we're looking into holding that in-person meeting. I'll be sending out a meeting invite to hold it on your calendars, and some further updates to come, details on that. But that's all I had. Thanks everybody for all that you do and all the time. Appreciate it. That's all I had for today.
Thank you, Riva. Look at this, 2:48. We get an hour and 12 minutes of our lives that we didn't know we could get back. Eat your face, Carl. I'm just saying, don't say that. This is recorded. Okay, never mind. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate you very much.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day.